This is watercolor artist Dennis Pendleton, and today I'm going to show you how to paint a sunflower. I'll be using an Escada travel brush, a Kolinsky Sable number 10, and I'm painting on Stonehenge 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. And I'm using Winsor Newton colors. So for the sunflower, I'm going to start with some transparent yellow, which is a color I really like because it's transparent, which is unusual for yellow. I want these colors to blend a little bit as I go along. So now I'm picking up some olive green to create these leaves because I want them to bleed in a little bit into the little bud from the sunflower. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Indian red in here. Just whatever color I'm using, I try to either change values or change colors as I go along. Now I want to open this up a little bit, so I'm going to do a little bit of spattering on here like that. And then I will come down again with some olive green into the stem here, and by using a little less pressure on the brush, I get a completely different brush stroke. So now I'm getting down into the sunflower, but before I do that, I want to add a little bit of a dark, so I'm using perylene green just to drop a couple darks in here so I get some value changes. I think just for the fun of it, I'm going to put a little bit of cobalt violet right up here in the top of the sunflower bud like that. Now I'm going down into the petals, and I'm going to use again some of that transparent yellow. And I like to move the brush the way the handle is pointed. So I'm making a stroke like this. A lot of pressure there, less pressure, and finally just a little bit of pressure. Now, while that is still damp, I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna in a few places, like that, and maybe over here. Leaving little bits of white paper as I go, that will make the thing sparkle. Now I'm back to just the transparent yellow. But I have 4 different yellows on my palette, and I want to use all 4 of them to keep this thing from being boring. So that was lemon yellow. This is cadmium yellow. So it went from cool to warm right there. Now I'm going back to the transparent yellow and bleed some of that through like this. These colors are all wet now, so it's working really nicely. I'll put some more lemon out here and then add a little bit more of the transparent yellow. Just drop it in like this so it mixes right on the paper, like that. And then as it comes down, I'm going to get into a green leaf. This time I'm using olive green with a little bit of ultramarine blue in it. So I get a nice rich dark green down here. And I want some of that color from the sunflower to bleed down into it, which is exactly what it just did. Now I'm going to take burnt sienna and start working on the head of the flower. And while I'm doing this, I want to leave some little bits of white here and there as I create this pattern for the head of the flower. I'm using mainly burnt sienna now, but I'll probably also put in some Indian red. Those little white slivers that I'm leaving in there are really important. They will make the thing sparkle and also separate some of this pattern the way I want. This is the Indian red now. And it bled up into the yellow up there a little bit, which is fine with me. Now I want to get into a darker value, so I'm taking some of that burnt sienna and I'm adding ultramarine blue to it. Get a little bit of it going here. That'll make it an even darker value. And I'm going to drop that in while this is wet. So I got a soft edge up there and a hard edge down here, and that's exactly what I want. Edges are so important in watercolor, and when you can move from a soft edge to a hard edge with the same stroke, it's a very effective watercolor technique. That's just a little bit of burnt sienna in there while it was still wet, so it bled around nicely. Now I'll go back to some of the transparent yellow and drop another leaf in right here. See how some of that color bled down from the sunflower? That's fine with me. Now if I didn't like it, if I think it's too much, I'll just take a paper towel and lift a little bit of it out. And while that is running around still wet, I'll put another leaf down here. I'm sorry, another petal from the sunflower like that. And now, getting back to the green stem, I want some of this to bleed and some of it to have a sharp edge. So I'm putting it where I want a sharp edge right here. I'm going to leave just a tiny little sliver of white paper. Otherwise, I want this bleeding around like that. I'll just make a stroke like that with the brush with the olive green. Now, on strokes like that, try to do it with one single stroke. Don't use a little brush with a bunch of little tiny marks. Get in the habit of doing strokes like that in one shot. Now, I'm going to mix some green this time. I'm going to use cerulean blue and some lemon yellow. Those are both cool colors, so they mix nicely together. And I'm just doing this so all the leaves won't be the same. And you can see how I pressured the brush and then lifted it like that. And you can see different colors within that because I didn't stir the mixture up. Add a little more lemon yellow there. Now I'm going to go back to some olive green for another branch or another leaf over here like this. Again, trying to do it with one stroke. I'll come down here, finish off the stem, add a little bit of perylene green in here so I get a darker edge on part of it in a few places. Now this has all bled around just the way I want up here, so I'm going to go back. I think it's dry enough that I can go back and separate a couple of those petals right in here like this, and coming down, that separates a couple of them nicely. It's still a little bit damp, but that's all right. I'm going to slip a little bit of red in here, like that. And I'm going to put another petal coming out, just very simply, just like that. So now I have a lot of things happening in there, and while that is drying, I'm looking at things like this, where the paint's separated on the paper and how nice and interesting that turned out. I want this to dry up here, so I'm going to blot it a little bit so it'll dry a little bit quicker, because I want to go in and separate out two of those petals. Let's see, still a little damp, but I think I can pull it off. This is burnt sienna, and when I don't want it to bleed out around very much, I'm using almost no water and just the paint, so there'd be less chance of it spreading all over the place. If the brush was wet with water and a lot of paint, I wouldn't be able to do what I just did. That's turning out the way I want. Let's bring that petal up a little higher like that. Connect this. This is still damp, and I want it to be a little bit dry so that I can put in the areas that I want to have sharper edges. So I'm just putting a little bit of lemon here and there, like that. Lemon is a very opaque color, so I can go in like that and put it on top of a darker color. Now some of this separated in here, so I'm going to go back and put a little bit more of definition in here. Like that. And I want to bring this out. I want to make the head of the flower a little more prominent, so I'm doing just that. This part over here is still wet, and I want to put some definition in there, but can't do it right now to get the edges that I want. So I'll work on some more of this. I just want to get a little bit of a separation in there. I have several reds on my palette. That's Indian red. I've also used some alizarin crimson in a few places like that. Now these colors are all blending together in just the way I want. It's just a matter now of letting it dry a little bit so I can put in a few hard edges where I want. I'm going to soften that edge that I just put in like that. So I have a combination of hard and soft edges with that brush stroke. This is refusing to dry, so I'm going to blot it a little bit. There we go. I think that will do it. We'll find out here. Yeah, there we go. I just want to separate these two petals like that. And let's see, let's put a little bit of color along the edge here. These are just decisions that I'm making as I look at the flower to see if there's any place where I want to go a little more, have it a little more defined. And this final touch, one of the last things I do is look to where I can put some darker values, because I like to have light, medium, and dark values through just about anything that I'm painting. And that just accomplished that. And I'm going to drag a little bit of that up into the flower head like this. There we go. I think I'll call that finished. So this is...
Oh. Whoops. No, sorry. Go.
So again, this is artist Dennis Pendleton. You can look me up on my website, DennisPendletonStudio.com. So this is Dennis Pendleton saying happy painting.